Very well now, it has been a very busy week for Kenya and the world. I mean, Kenya has seen a slow economy due to the ongoing demonstrations, and Russia has also attacked Ukraine as that war continues to rage on. And in studio with me is Onchari Oyeyo from the international affairs expert from the Center for African Progress. Onchari, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
A bit earlier,
but
things happen. But now let's go straight into it now.
Yes.
The country right now is going through a slow period due to the ongoing demonstrations.
Yes.
And the international community is now speaking, raising its voice towards it. How does the international community look at Kenya?
Now, thank you so much, and apologies for showing up late. Usually I keep time. So a couple of things.
Yes.
Number one, Kenya is viewed as a very, very strategic country in both Eastern Africa and the Horn of Africa. Mm-hmm. And actually now I think since President Ruto got elected and got sworn into office, it's become an Africa kind of star. You realize every meeting he goes, there's some candidness with which he speaks that has made him a magnet.
Pan-African agenda.
Yes, and they feel like now he's the solid, spokesman for the continent. So Kenya has a very high profile. So anytime there is some kind of semblance of, sliding into anarchy, they're scared because that landing foot they need to get or to access the rest of the continent is threatened. So that is how they view it. Number two, there's what we call the safe haven for so many people running away from turmoil.
Refugees, yes.
Yes, from the rest of Africa, not necessarily now. That is removing the rest of the extra-continental, partners. So we're now looking at the continent itself. When there is a crisis in Uganda, the only place where Ugandans can run to is Kenya. When there's a crisis in Tanzania, they can come here. Ethiopia, South Sudan, they're pouring here. So anytime we have this kind of uncertainty, we have chaos, that is also threatened. So those are the two issues. So the international community is concerned because if Kenya is not this safe place where the people can run to, then the migration from Africa to especially Europe that has been, fought against for so long will actually intensify. So those are the two main issues. So they have a concern which is legitimate, and I think our leaders have to be very much aware of the critical role this country plays, not just within the continent, but also beyond. And
you've said something very important because Kenya is safe haven for those other countries that are going through difficult times as well.
Yes.
And just this week we saw the Sudanese government, that is the Sudan government, also sent a circular telling its people in Kenya to get their passports ready in case things go down in Kenya, they go back. But where are they going back to?
That is, I saw that and then I laughed because it sounded like a joke. Because when if things get out of hand, it cannot get to where Sudan is now. So I don't know what it was meant to achieve, but diplomatically it was a joke. It was laughable because that is not a place, these guys can actually go into, okay? But then it was a reminder to us as Kenyans that because we've been this safe host for so many of these people, we need to make sure our house is in order. And actually, what we have, in as much as it can be a big issue when you look at it internally, you cannot compare this with what the rest of the continent has to deal with. We're just having issues over the cost of living, which is a concern everywhere. The other day, the UK got a prime minister who could not stay in office beyond 45 days, right? That is how Sunaki came into office. So the cost of living has been an issue in so many parts of the world, but they don't demonstrate. They have polite, silent, focused discussions, and then if it's about leadership that is supposed to be changed, they have a culture where if you're not able to turn the economy around, you just do it, pave way for someone else to do it, to take over. So so we shouldn't be doing what we are doing when we can talk, right? Yeah.
And now, as we still talk about Sudan now, we know that there is ongoing conversation between these two warring groups. Yes. But even while at it, they're still bombing each other. They're still killing people. Others continue to be refugees. Do we have any progress? Do we have a site that we can say we are approaching towards, or should the African Union decide to just send its own force there to make sure that peace is found?
The last time we had this discussion, I actually said the issue of an African force is long overdue. Okay, even if it's just to make sure civilians are protected,
yes,
and civilian infrastructure like airports, stadia, hospitals, and schools are protected. They just need to do that. That is a standing army we need, that needs to show up any place there is a crisis. So it's long overdue. But then again, like I said last time, the two warring groups, the one led by the RSF guy and the army general, are not equal. Yeah. They don't come from the same moral, standing. We have a man who's leading a legitimate force, that is the Sudanese army. Then we have a guy who's the leader of a militia with a long trail of atrocities right from Darfur. So they don't come from the same moral standing, and they don't have to be treated as such. They need to be treated as separate entities, with one having a legitimate right to actually bring order in Sudan, and the other one led by someone who would say is power hungry. Now, obviously, that is not going to be very, very pleasant to so many people who support the RSF guy.
Yes.
But then when they're invited to the table of negotiation, they need to be treated as separate entities which are not equal. And the moment they keep on reminding the RSF guy like that, he lowers expectations, right? Yeah. So he shows up as the leader of a militia that is not constitutionally backed, and then he can be able to even follow instructions. And when you look at, when you do the analysis, actually it's the RSF that has done most of the destruction. Yes. The bombing has been indiscriminate. They've been responsible for most of 90% of the rapes. And the army has been trying to contain these guys, and these guys have been trying to destroy the country. So we need African leaders to have this message out there. If they keep on dodging and dealing with these guys like equal forces, they'll embolden this RSF guy to a point where he cannot even be able to show up on the table of negotiation. That is where there is limited progress that is being made.
Yes, we only hope that as they continue to find their ways around it, that peace is finally found in Sudan, because it's long overdue that they enjoy peace. But let's go to Russia. Yes. And African leaders will be going to Russia for their Russia-Africa summit as they continue to have this conversation. What will this do to our other friends from the West who don't want anything to do with Russia?
At this point, the West is not very much concerned with Russia because, every single moment I have a chance, I remind people that the West is a very solid force. This is an entrenched and well-founded civilization.
But you'd also argue that Russia is giving them sleepless nights.
Well, that is because of nuclear weapons. Trust me, if Russia didn't have nuclear weapons, the West could be sleeping pretty and easy. Now, the issue is, we're looking at superpowers. We're looking at economic bulldozers. We're looking at France. We're looking at Great Britain. We're looking at Sweden, Finland, Denmark, the United States, Germany, and Belgium. All of them united against Russia. That is why Ukraine, a very small country, which obviously is a former member of the USSR, has given Russia a very long battle that we didn't expect. People were saying, oh, Russia is a superpower. It's going to crash Ukraine in a few days.
In 2 days,
It's not happened, right? And as we speak now, Russia is on the ground. It's actually now using advanced weaponry that you shouldn't expect that kind of country to use against Ukraine. So, and that is exactly why I think the West wanted Russia. They wanted to get a war that they could, influence Putin or dupe Putin into getting it. Then he gets to stretch himself to the ground. That's what he has done. The other day, he was almost being kicked out of power by the mercenaries.
But let's talk about this relationship between Africa and Russia and how the West will now start looking at Africa.
It does not. The West does not care whether African leaders meet Putin or not at this point, because there's limited help Russia can offer to Africa. So, and they know, like last time our president had a photo op with the Russian foreign minister. There was not much concern from the West because they know what Russia is going through. It cannot have any influence. And any serious African leader who wants to advance, who wants to lead this or country to greater heights, the direction to look at is not Russia. Russia is dealing with a lot.
In 2 minutes as we wind down.
Yes.
Now, there is the question of Russia has just attacked the grain reserve in Ukraine, which is also a big producer of food across the world.
Yes.
We are currently on the streets, cost of living.
Yes.
How is that likely to affect us?
Very, very significant, because, when you look at the chain of supply, that grain could flow from Odessa all the way to where? To African countries. And that is why when African leaders show up in Russia for an Africa,
you had
Russia
to go
summit,
back there, yeah.
They're going to meet someone. They're going to meet a leader who does not actually have their
interest at
heart. You want me to meet you and discuss how you're going to help me, and yet you cannot allow grain to flow from Ukraine to our continent. You say that. So it's hypocrisy. They actually need to have instead of going to meet Putin at this point, they need to have a conference of African leaders. They can invite him to come and see how these guys are doing what, having the discussions.
Maybe have a discussion on why Kenyans are on the streets, because we don't have grain. Cost of living is high.
But people are harvesting, and we expect unga prices to actually go down in the next few weeks.
We wait to see that, because I also expect them to say they want good prices as well. Then again, this is Africa Speaks. My name is Dennis Asset on set. As always, great man, Onchari Oyeyo, taking us through Kenya, through the international eye, international affairs expert. I'm Dennis Asset. Many thanks to the entire team that made this a success, and you the rest of your viewing.